If you're a freelance copywriter or consultant who's never been inside someone else's business, you are missing a trick. I don't care how good your copy is, I don't care how many clients you've got, and I don't even care how much freedom you want. You're still missing something. I figured that out about a year into my freelance copywriting career when I started working with Russ Ruffino at Clients on Demand. The way I worked with Russ would honestly give some of the original digital nomads an actual panic attack. But looking back, it was literally the best thing I did for my career. In this video, I'll tell you why, and I'll also explain why actually working inside someone else's business as almost like a job could be the best thing that you do for your career too. Reason number one is the sheer volume of work. So one big issue with freelancing is that you often never find out how your copy does. I'm sure you've experienced this before, but you get hired for a project, maybe you have a brief, maybe you create the brief, but you might be writing an email sequence or a new funnel for someone. And you do your job, it's absolutely amazing, the work's great, you love it, you send it back to the client, and either they just don't ever run it, or they run bits of it, or they do run it and they never get back to you. Now, as much as you want to follow up and try and get that data so you can keep a working relationship, you can have a great testimonial for your portfolio, sometimes it just doesn't work out like that. And that can hold a lot of copywriters back. I remember reading some stuff from Ian Stanley years ago where he said that he worked for, I think it was about a year inside a company, which may have been Mind Valley, but don't quote me on that. And he talked about how it was just doing the reps at volume that really got him to get good at copy. He was doing so much work that actually it was almost impossible not to get better. And he saw the real world data and feedback from that. And that's exactly what I got at Clients on Demand. Because you're doing so much, you learn more in like 6 months of more of a job style role than you potentially would in 6 years of working with your own clients. And ultimately, the benefit of that might not come while you're doing that one gig, but it certainly comes afterwards, because not only are you a better copywriter, a better consultant, but actually you can use that social proof in the company as kind of your own social proof, which makes you more attractive to prospects in the future. The second reason was exposure to different clients and to different offers. So everyone in Clients on Demand, all of our clients, they had coaching style offers. But we'd have within that loads and loads of different industries. So we would definitely have like health coaches, finance coaches, we'd have relationship coaches, dating coaches, even some business coaches, although we didn't want to create competition for ourselves. Those are our kind of main 5, possibly 6 niches as well. But outside of that, we had loads of other different offers. So I remember, for example, I would work with some coaches who taught high-end music stuff. So they're basically an online music teacher, but they had like a 5 to 10K program. There were other people who would help kids get into Ivy League schools. So their whole thing was basically tutoring, but just wrapped up in a high-ticket package. Then we had some super weird offers that weren't even kind of coaching. We had one guy who sold 10 grand handstand packages. We had someone else who organized jazz trips to Peru. There's loads of different stuff that if you're working freelance, you just wouldn't get to see that many different offers. And a lot of copywriters and consultants, they get into one niche and they specialize. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but I also think that there's a lot to be said for just having exposure to different niches. It's kind of like if you're a kid or a teenager and you get into one sport, say you love football or soccer for Americans, right? And you get into it when you're 7 years old. If that's all you play and you're consistent with it, you might turn out, be amazing, be a professional, make your living from it. But actually what happens to most kids is one of two things. Either they get to a certain level, their skill and their talent plateaus, and then they're just dropped and you never hear about them again. Or they get burnt out and bored and they don't want to play again, even if they've got the capacity to get to the top level. Whereas if you have a kid and you teach them gymnastics, you teach them something like football or soccer, you teach them some sort of racket sport to develop hand-eye coordination, maybe you teach them a combat sport, they might not be as specialist, but they're probably going to stay being sporty for longer, and actually they're going to find what they're best at. I think it's almost the same with copywriting consulting. There's an argument to be made for specializing, but actually having exposure to lots of different offers and trying your hand at stuff, it lets you know what you're good at. It lets you know what you enjoy, and it also lets you know what you hate. I mean, I found out that I really didn't like writing copy around dating and relationships. I just found it really boring. Whereas the health stuff, I kind of knew I liked it anyway, but I really managed to lean into that. And in the end, I found that I loved that even more. So give yourself that time of having more of a job to work out actually what you like doing, what you're best at. The third benefit was seeing the whole machine. If you work as a copywriter or consultant on your own, you probably only see one side of the business, and that's the marketing. You probably don't even see all of the marketing. You see your bit, and that's kind of all. When you think about really successful businesses, there's so much more that goes into them than that. So for example, at Clients on Demand, there was the operations side of things, like how the program was run, what the other coach in the program did, all that kind of stuff. Then we had the tech. So how did we run our own tech stuff, whether it was the webinars, the replays, designing pages, all that kind of thing. And then how did our clients do that for their funnels as well? Then there was media buying. So running ads for Facebook, for Meta, for YouTube, all that kind of thing. Then there was client support. Then there was like the leadership team. So you get a lot of visibility into different parts of the company. And that's a benefit for two reasons. Firstly, if you ever want to have your own offer, you're probably going to need an element of that. Even if you don't want to grow to 7 figures, 8 figures, whatever, you will have to hire people and have other parts of the business that do roles that you can't do. If you've worked inside someone else's company, that gives you a really good insight. And the other reason is just for future clients as well. So like now, the clients I work with, I can talk with people who do delivery. I can talk with people who do media buying. I can talk with the tech people, and I kind of know what their role is to a degree. Certainly enough where actually I can have a valuable input and where I can see where my work fits in with theirs and where we can make the whole business better. The fourth reason was learning from Russ directly. So to get into the Clients on Demand program, I don't know what the cost is now, but I think it was about $10,000 to $15,000 as the base entry program at the time. If you wanted to enroll in the higher ticket mastermind after that, it was something like $6,000 a month. You had to sign up for a year. So Russ has got people who've paid him literally hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. And I essentially had a direct line to him to ask him any questions I wanted 7 days a week. Obviously, I was respectful of that. I didn't take the piss. I wasn't messaging all the time. I wasn't sort of trying to pick his brains on how I could set up a competitor offer. But he taught me a lot of stuff that effectively, I was going to say I was learning it for free. I wasn't. I was being paid to learn it because he was employing me. And I think that's something that a lot of people neglect when they think about potentially working inside a company, is that you can have a really good relationship with the owner, the CMO, whoever it is, someone who has got more knowledge and experience than you. They kind of act as an informal mentor. So obviously, as I always say with mentoring, with coaching, you want to pick a company and pick a person who you aspire to be like and someone who you vibe with, but you can get the kind of mentoring that other people are paying a lot of money for, effectively just for doing your job. Number 5 is a sustainable, predictable income. Me saying that might be surprising, seeing as I'm the guy who talks about picking and choosing clients, firing clients, working from wherever, not worrying too much about your income as long as you've got freedom. But honestly, especially starting out, knowing how much you're going to make every month, it's a real safety net. It gives you a lot of confidence. I felt that having that role with Clients on Demand, it just gave me a lot more freedom in other areas of life. For full disclosure, when I started there, I think I was on about $4,000 a month. And by the end, it rose to about $9,000 a month, I think, from memory. So it was well paid for the work I was doing, but I still had freedom to go and do other roles alongside that. The cool thing was, I always preach to people, you don't want to be coming at new business from a place of scarcity or desperation, just because people kind of sniff that out. They can tell that you really need their business more than they need you, and that always affects your sales. But if you have a role like this, where, yeah, maybe it's 30 hours a week, for example, so you've not got a huge amount of extra time, it means that actually you can be quite selective about what else you do, whether that's your own offers, whether that's working with other clients, but it puts you in a position where you're not waking up worried about money. And to me, that's very powerful. As much as I talk about freedom, financial freedom is a part of that, and financial security is a big part of financial freedom. When you know your bills are getting paid every month because you've got kind of a wage coming in, it really just helps everything in life. And the 6th reason was it was just good fun. I actually really liked being part of a team. Don't get me wrong, I much prefer sitting on my laptop in a coffee shop with no one bothering me. That's like my happy place. I don't love Zoom calls, but talking to the team once or twice a week and knowing that they're there on Slack, even though they're in places like Armenia, in Bali, most of the team are in the US on various time zones, it was just cool to have other people to bounce ideas off. And I still speak to a lot of them online today, just because we're kind of friends. And it's what I always say, like, yes, we get into this because we want freedom. Most of us are probably a bit introverted, but actually, whilst you might not want to work in an office with a commute and all that kind of stuff, being part of a team rather than always just feeling like you're dealing with clients on your own, that's really powerful, and it is genuinely quite good fun. So you might be thinking, okay, Mike, so am I supposed to just go and get a job, like work in-house at an agency or take a full-time wage? Because honestly, that doesn't feel too much like the freedom that you always talk about. And you would be absolutely right. So I am going to put some stipulations on this, and I'll talk you through why this kind of gig worked really well for me at the time. So first and foremost, I was fortunate that my workload wasn't full-time. I would say most days was about 90 minutes to 3 hours in our platform called Zendesk that was critiquing client copy. So I could basically do that whenever I wanted, and I chose to do it early in the morning. So I would do it kind of 6:30, 7 a.m. I get it all done by probably 9 o'clock at the latest. And that was all I had to do in terms of answering to that day. That worked really well because where most of our clients are in the US, I could get all my replies done, get all my critiquing done, and without being callous, no one then bothered me for the rest of the day. I didn't have to deal with that until the next morning, which meant that most of my day from 9 o'clock was filled up for other clients for other projects. Outside of that, the only other commitments I had were a couple of calls a week. So they increased the more I was paid at the company and the longer I was there. In the early days, I think I had the first 6 months with basically one call a month that was just a team check-in call. But as the business grew and as we took on more clients, that expanded a bit. But even at its busiest with calls, it wasn't too bad. I used to have about a 90-minute call at 5 p.m. on a Monday. I would have an hour call at 3 p.m. every other Tuesday. There was a 90-minute call at 5 p.m. every Thursday. And then I think every other Wednesday we had like a team call as well. So even on the busiest week when I had the Tuesday and Wednesday calls, it was probably about 6 hours of calls a week. So add that to everything else. I think the most I ever did was about 25 hours a week. That suited me. Well, 15 to 20 suited me. But what I'm saying is find the number of hours that suit you. It might be 40 hours working for someone. It probably isn't if you're watching this video, you're the kind of person who doesn't want all your eggs in one basket. But if you can get a gig like this where it's about a 15, 20, 25, maybe even 30 hours a week gig, that's probably about the sweet spot. The other benefit was I was allowed to work on my own stuff. A big no for me with any kind of client would be if they said you can't have other clients. I don't want my income relying on one person. I like at least 3 or 4 clients at any one time, plus all of my own offers going on as well. I think it's okay to have a non-compete. So if in this instance, Russ had said, you can't work with any other high ticket coaching companies, you can't work with any other webinar companies, that's totally fine. And actually, I think there was that in my contract and I was cool with that. But if you're working for, I don't know, an app company in the finance space, for example, and they say you can't work with any coaching businesses in the pre and postnatal space, it just seems a bit bizarre. You know, you're a freelancer, unless they're going to give you all the benefits of employment as well, they shouldn't treat you like an employee. So this kind of thing works great, provided there's still that element of freedom and flexibility built in. The other thing which kind of links into the hours is the flexibility. So have a think, is this role going to allow me to live the kind of lifestyle I want? So I know people who've got similar roles in other companies like this, and actually they're far more restrictive. They have to do like a team huddle every day. They have to talk with clients whenever the client wants to talk to them. They have to do team meetings sort of every week or, you know, even every day for some people. And again, for me, that's just not what I've gone to business for. You would have to pay me a lot of money at this stage to get me to do something like that, because that really is more of a job. And I know this video is titled about getting a job, but I'm not necessarily meaning that we're getting suited and booted, going into an office every day, or even being on call sort of 9 till 5 on Zoom. Personally, I don't want that. I don't think you do either. So if you're going to take more of a job role, make sure that it does work in with your lifestyle. All that said, you might be thinking, well, why did you leave if it was so great? And honestly, there were kind of 2 reasons for this. The first reason was that we got a new CMO, and I got on fine with him, but I just didn't like the way he was taking the company. He wanted us to start having daily calls. He said that he liked the idea that if a client wanted something, we would send them a Zoom link and talk to them for 15 to 30 minutes rather than responding via email or saying, can you wait for the Q&A call on Monday or Thursday? Totally fine. You know, that was his role to say that's how he wanted it, but it just didn't sit right with me. Secondly, he also wanted the copy coaches, so the people doing my role, to become Facebook ads coaches as well, so we could all help clients on the same staff, and vice versa. So the Facebook ad coaches had to learn copy. Now, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, but I think that's an idea that's headed for a car crash. I think it's good to have complementary skills, but I also think if you've got people who are new to copywriting, they should be learning that from expert copywriters. And if you've got people who are new to Facebook ads, they should be learning that from expert Facebook ad coaches, So I didn't feel comfortable if I went and did some basic Facebook ad stuff and I learned just enough to know what I was doing, to then teach that back to someone else. Personally, I felt it was a bit disingenuous. I felt it wasn't really caring about the clients, and I just didn't really want to do it. And so I handed my notice. And actually, initially they said to me, look, can you stay? We really want to keep you. So I said, yeah, here's what I'd like to change. Can we make that happen? And I think they tried, but it just didn't really work. Yeah, the company was going in one direction. I wanted to go in another, and that's totally fine. So after a few more months, I said to them, look, I don't think it's really working. Actually, we've had a great run. I think we better call it a day. And they're all really cool with it. I still talk to Russ now. I met him in London a couple of months ago, and actually brought me back into a few projects since, which I think is testament to saying, look, have a really good relationship with your clients, whether you let them go, whether they let you go. Ultimately, this is a relationship business. And if you can keep those good relationships, it just makes everything that much easier. So a copywriting job isn't for everyone. You might have watched this video and thought, that sounds like absolute hell. I want way more freedom than that. But I also think there's this weird stigma of working inside a company where sometimes as copywriters, as consultants, we let our ego get in the way and we think, I need to be calling all the shots. I need to be the boss of clients. And yeah, there's an argument for that, and I like working with people that way. But sometimes, especially if you're starting out, having something that's a bit more like a job, honestly, it's far from the worst thing in the world. And actually, it might just be the best thing you do for your career. One of my clients, Daniel Priestley, he talks about this in terms of an entrepreneurial apprenticeship. So he says, look, in construction, in a lot of different roles, you would have an apprenticeship. You would be learning the craft and you go and work with someone else for a year or two to learn it from someone who's far more experienced. I see it the same here. Pick someone who you want to learn from. Pick a company that you admire and go somewhere where they're doing the kind of work that, yeah, you're paid less for it because you're doing it as part of a company. And if you went out on your own, you could charge a lot more, but you're kind of setting yourself up for doing that in the future. I work with a lot of coaches now who have high ticket offers, and my copy, my marketing help, all the stuff I do for them is so much better because I spent all that time with clients on demand. I'd have had to make so many more mistakes on my own time and risk losing my own clients had I gone straight into it from scratch. So actually having those 6-7 years working there and kind of, to be frank, using other people's money and working with other people's clients, it was really helpful for me. Ultimately, even if you only do it for 12 months, it's a really good way to get experience. It opens a lot of doors, and above all, it just gives you so much more confidence. So yeah, a job may be for you, it may not, but my advice would be do it for a bit, see how you go. It's probably going to make you a better copywriter or consultant.